faith. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. 1 Corinthians 13:13, New International Version. My lecture today will be on the second principle in human life, faith. I use the word faith because we don't have a better word. I use it in the broadest sense, and I make the distinction between faith and believing. There can be no contradictions at all in faith. It excludes all doubt. But beliefs assume the possibility of doubt by 50%. You can believe you'll become good, but you can also believe you'll become bad. You can believe that you'll live, but you can also believe that you'll die. These days, people constantly rise, suffer, and die, and this is all on the basis of beliefs. The world is full of beliefs. All scientists and religious people study only beliefs. But these beliefs brought neither salvation, nor freedom, nor knowledge, nor the love we expect, because it's all based on belief. I'm not saying believing is bad, but it's only a preface to faith. I will consider faith from 4 points of view. Namely, I'll examine it as a subconscious aspiration in the heart, as a conscious feeling in the soul, as a self-conscious power in the mind, and as a superconscious principle in the spirit. Or, in other words, if we were to say it scientifically, as aspiration in the subconscious, as feeling in the conscious, as power in self-consciousness, and as a principle in the superconscious. Now, make note of these relations. I will talk on the issue in terms of principle. I don't have a goal of defending any narrowly confined cause, nor any narrowly confined teaching. My goal is to talk about the truth as it is. Faith is a principle of the human mind. So, the beginning of the human mind is faith, or, in other words, the mind is built on the basis of faith. Faith unites the human mind and intellect with the harmony in nature and gives it the impulse to develop and study the laws of existence. Now, when you hear me, be kind enough to leave all your preconceived notions aside. You don't need to throw them out, but you need to leave your backpack with your beliefs and delusions aside until you feel better. And then, after you hear me talk, put it on your back again and go your way. I have nothing against this. Otherwise, you'll resemble that Bulgarian with the heavy load, who was met on the road by a coachman who was going the same way. Upon seeing the heavy load carried by the traveler, the coachman offered to pick him up in his cart. The traveler got up in the cart, sat in it, but he didn't remove the load from his back. "Remove your load, friend, and leave it aside in the cart," the coachman said to him. "I don't want to trouble you," the traveler replied. "No, you're not causing me any trouble, but only to yourself. My wish is for the load to come off your back. I took both you and your load, so you can both rest. There's enough space for both you and the load in my cart." When we get on the divine cart, we have to remove our load and rest. Consequently, every one of you who wants to have an enlightened mind, in whatever direction he wants to take it, who wants to study nature in whatever field he wants, must have the aspiration to study living nature. He has to have faith. I'm not one of those people who say we have to strive to develop in only one direction. Philosophically speaking, all directions create one true direction, which is the truth. Hence, we have to strive towards all directions, because from the viewpoint of faith, all directions are good. Perhaps sufferings may come in one of those directions, but they are a way for straightening oneself out. When these sufferings come over us, they indicate a transgression of divine laws in the past, of the elements, of the harmony in the divine world, in which the transgression of the mind gave birth to evil in the current world. And from a lack of understanding, we constantly ask ourselves why this evil came. If you cut an electric wire from the installation in which an electric current constantly flows and catch it with your hands, do you know what will happen to you? The wire is harmless as long as it stands still. But if you start cutting it, it becomes dangerous. If you stand on top of a sewage pipe, you're in a safe place. But if you say, "Let me drill a hole so I can see what's in the pipe," you'll harm yourself and have to run far away. Why? Because you punctured the pipe, and the flow of water will divert. It will engulf you. Modern-day people are interesting. Like little children, they carry chisels and say, "Let's puncture the pipe here. Let's puncture it there." When the danger comes, they say, "Now run." Some chemist, a professor, sits in the laboratory holding the retort, experimenting. The retort bursts. The liquid scatters. The professor runs away. Everything gets destroyed. I say, "This professor punctured the pipe. This is not the only way to do research. There's also another way to research. When you want to condition your mind, when you want to purify it, you certainly have to impart faith within yourselves." Someone will object. Nothing can be achieved with faith. Everything is achieved with faith, and nothing can be achieved without faith. As long as you have faith, your mind will be healthy and strong. You'll have the mind of a genius. It'll be able to accomplish everything. The moment you let go of faith, your mind will split. Cracks will form in it, and then you're lost. Do you know what happens with such people? They start one task. They work for an hour. They get disappointed because their affairs don't seem to go as planned. The faith comes back again, and they start working again. They work for an hour, and they let go of faith again. And so, some people work in the world, while others sit around in cafes, twirling their thumbs, not working. They lost their faith. What should one do with such people? Impart faith in their minds, and they'll be saved. I will relate an occult story to you, which you must always keep in your minds when you reflect on faith. In ancient times, there was a son of a king who fell in love with a maidservant who was very wise, intelligent, and beautiful. He decided to marry her. The young woman became very happy and said to herself, "Now my life has meaning. This royal son will give me everything I ever dreamed of." She imagined she would have magnificent palaces with many rooms, where she would have court ladies, frauleins, and others wait on her. He really did make a large palace for her, and in addition to that, he promised to give her everything she ever dreamed of. But when they married, he said to her, "Please, I don't want any maids in my palace, so they don't remind me of your low social background. You alone will clean this palace and organize everything." When faith appears in the human mind, the mind will tell you, "I don't want maidservants in my palace." Who are these maidservants? You don't know something, and you say to yourselves, "Let me see what such and such author says about this. What did Kant say about this?" Kant is also a person just like you. He might have uttered many nice ideas, but you shouldn't rely on him completely. What did Kant say in his work, The Critique of Pure Reason? He said that things are impossible to achieve. This is 50% true. For a person who has faith, everything in the world is achievable. Consequently, whether things are achievable or unachievable depends on faith. Faith fills time, and time is a process of divine intelligence. It's a rhythm of divine harmony. Faith determines the relationship between the tones, the combinations within this divine harmony. Furthermore, it determines the interrelated ratios of our thoughts. Every thought is a tone in our minds, and if we have faith, all our thoughts will form a majestic divine harmony. And so, faith has to begin from the heart, in your subconsciousness. This is where the luminous sunbeam of intelligent aspiration must be imparted. When you go to bed at night, put the following thought in your mind: the faith in which I live will impart divine harmony in the aspirations of my heart. Go to bed with this thought, with complete trust in your subconsciousness. Don't philosophize. Don't think of the consequences. When you plant some grain of wheat in the ground, don't think about how it will grow. It will complete its task on its own. If you sit beside it and think about how it will grow, whether it will grow or not, and you start digging it up and burying it again, you'll stun its growth. You'll prevent it from developing. Some people perceive a divine thought the same way, but they start reasoning whether it's divine or not. Let this thought freely grow in your consciousness. Until a certain thought grows, until it starts developing, until it blossoms, until it blooms, until it gives fruit, and this fruit ripens, don't bother with it. You cannot know whether it is divine or not. You can't recognize the divine truth that is imparted in it. And this requires time. Time is an expression of truth. Where there is no time, there is no truth. A lie always tries to shorten time. All the people who take money from bankers with short terms do not prosper. They alter their policies every 3 months. It would be advantageous for the policies to have long terms. In contemporary thought, all the sciences have short terms. We don't believe in short terms, but we believe in long terms. We regard the long term as a circular movement of the energy within the soul. The second manifestation of faith is when it appears as a feeling in the consciousness. This means that in a given moment, you would feel like your thought couldn't even be a thought until it projects in the material world. This thought must take the right form, because correct thinking is nothing else except your thought having the right fit with the laws in which you live. If your thought doesn't take the right form, it will resemble an ugly woman, and we don't like ugly people. Consequently, ugly forms produce a disharmonious impression in our minds. Beauty is a certain quality of thought. Hence, the thought within us must be beautiful. If you don't feel like your thought is correct, you'll start checking it with other people. But by doing this, you'll go into another extreme. Why? Because they might also find themselves in the same situation as you. How will you check then whether your thought is correct or not? Consequently, the first thing you have to keep in mind is the following: to believe that your soul feels things correctly. The soul never lies. There's no lie at all in the human soul. The third manifestation of faith is in the power of thought. Your thought must have power. There must be movement and expansion within it. That is, it must be capable of producing something so you can accomplish any kind of task with it. You can test the power of your thought. If your thought is correct and runs harmoniously in every respect, that is, there is the right kind of aspiration in the heart, the right kind of feelings in the soul, the right resolution in the mind, then if you have any wound on your hand, when you focus your mind on it, it will heal quickly, in 5 or 10 minutes, or in 1 to 2 days, depending on the wound. All the catastrophes that take place nowadays in societies, as well as the political and scientific fields, are due to the disturbance of our mind, which didn't put faith as a foundation in life. We live in the world with beliefs. Where do all the catastrophes in the world come from? They come from the fact that we doubt God, the great law of love, and we say that God is not love, and that man is a wolf to another man, and God created this wolf. What philosophy then, what meaning does life have when we refer to the most exalted thing in the world as a wolf? But the wolf is a negation of love, a negation of faith. Consequently, every person can become a wolf. Once you lose your love, you take the form of a wolf, a bear, a tiger, a fox, because these wild animals are negative qualities of the great virtue we call love. The faith, however, determines why we suffer. I say, you lost your love. That's why you're a wolf. How can I correct this in myself? When you bring love into your heart, it will bring faith, and you will rise. You'll be an angel who serves in the divine world. Arm your mind with faith and not with beliefs, because beliefs are religious, pagan systems that appear as a result of the experiences of the past. Modern religions are an attempt to straighten out mankind. I don't judge them, but I say all religions strive to help mankind. And all the great teachers come in the midst of mankind in order to raise it, so they can help it, since they are servants of the great divine law. But their followers distorted this law. They only dwell on its external appearance, and by doing so, they distorted the life itself. This is how they created beliefs. The doctor comes and says to you, "Have faith in me, I will help you." He starts one injection today, another one tomorrow. You spend a lot of money, but nothing helps. The priest comes and sings for you. No, don't put your faith in such a doctor, but only in the one who carries love as a principle. If your doctor or friend has this principle of love within, accept him. But if he doesn't have it, he might be a teacher, a priest, or a doctor. Close your door to such a person. Don't accept him. Let him stay outside. Scripture says, "Without faith, it is impossible to please God." I translate these words like this: without a mind, without wisdom, one cannot please God. Which children please their parents? Aren't they the wise ones? The well-behaved ones? The stupid and mischievous child doesn't please his parents. Every person who brings joy and happiness is wise. The wise sons and daughters, the wise friends, teachers, and priests are the people of faith. Now, when you ask some people whether there is life after death, they say, "Who knows? Science has yet to prove it." But who is more advanced, science or us? Well, who created science? Did it create us, or did we create it? We are like the old pagan peoples who created an image like themselves. They fell on their knees before their idol Baal and begged him, "Show us where is the truth." We have also been praying to science for 8,000 years to show us where the truth is. It won't show us anything. There is one science we have to rely on. It's the divine science, the science of the human spirit of love, of which the second principle is faith. It is an immutable science. It doesn't change. Contemporary science is man-made. It's a science of beliefs, of hypotheses. But in the science of faith, everything is determined precisely mathematically. Every tone there is in its place, just as it appears in music, as it does in mathematics. Every number is in its place. Everything in it is accurately predicted, as it is in technology, as it is in the organism. We say the stomach lacks intelligence, that it works in a purely mechanical way. No, the stomach is an excellent chemist. When you give it the necessary conditions, it works much better than our chemists. The food enters into it unprocessed, undigested, and it immediately secretes juices for digestion, for dissolving the food. After working for a few hours, the digested food passes into the intestines, so they can retain from it whatever they need. And then it gets distributed through the blood throughout the entire organism. And the lungs aren't a bellows, as some say. They also work according to certain laws. The brain also does its work well. Yet we, modern-day people, who think of ourselves as wise and intelligent, do all kinds of nonsense. When the husband can't straighten out his wife, he gives her a good beating. When the teacher can't correct his pupil, he kicks him out of school. When the priest can't straighten out his congregation, he excommunicates them from the church. He declares his parishioners as heretics. When the state can't reform some of its subjects, they go to prison, they go to the gallows, and all modern states make special establishments for their delinquent subjects. These are establishments dedicated to your foolishness, for which you will be judged. This is what is written above in the invisible world. These are policies that need to be paid off someday. The various ministers and ruling authorities shouldn't think that they won't be held responsible for those hundreds and thousands of people whom they imprisoned. No, heaven and earth will pass away, but not one jot or tittle of the law will change until everything returns to its original state. This is how things were since time immemorial, and it will be so until the end of the age. And not only in Bulgaria, but everywhere. When I talk about the end of the age, I mean the end of our foolishness and the beginning of divine harmony in the world, of that great idea that I'm referring to. And when we meet, then we won't be asking, "Are you a wolf or not?" I say, "Try my claws, try my teeth. If I have these, I'm a wolf. But if I don't have them, I'm not a wolf." And this faith, that which is noble and intelligent in man, doesn't allow you to have any claws or teeth. The claws are crooked mathematics. When the wolf loses his love and he can't expand his thought, he stands on the road and waits for a sheep to pass by so he can grab it and eat it. Why does he proceed like this? He's saying this: just as you, gentlemen, have the right to buy yourselves canned food from your stores, in the same way I have the right to buy myself a can of food from the divine store, so I open the lid and eat it. But the divine world forbids the consumption of canned food. There are no cans of food there at all. According to the divine law, when the wolf meets a sheep, he needs to tell her, "I'm very hungry. Can you sacrifice yourself for me according to the law of love?" If the sheep agrees, he can eat her. If the sheep doesn't agree, he'll have to wait for a second one or a third one to pass by until he finds one who is willing to sacrifice herself. If no sheep consents, he'll have to feed himself by eating roots. There was a time when the wolf lived like this. I will prove this to you. It's not something figurative, but a great law. When the wolf goes hungry for 7 or 8 days, he says to himself, "What a fool I am. There was a time when I ate differently." He goes into the forest and feeds on roots. If he hadn't eaten this way at some point, where would he get this idea? So, this means he used to live under different conditions. And now the Lord has to let us modern day people go hungry for 10 days so he can teach us that we can live in another way. We'll go into the forest, we'll pull up some sweet roots, and we'll feed ourselves. One can live like this too. Yet modern day doctors will try and explain to us what elements are necessary for our organism, what the elements in canned food consist of, and through which foods we can attain them. I'm not against this, but it's not any kind of culture. Keep in mind that every organic food you use, no matter how pure it is, always carries its poisons and causes deposits. There isn't a creature that doesn't die if it feeds on organic food. And man also started dying ever since he started eating such food, because every organic substance has pure and impure polarization. Watch how the cat eats mice. She catches a mouse and eats it all at once. If the cat, who is so neat and clean, ate the right way, she would live a lot longer. The cat says, "According to our science, I can no longer delay. I can't waste time. I'm hungry, which is why I will eat you whole." In the same way, the husband comes home from work and says to his wife, "Hurry, hurry, I'm hungry." If the food isn't cooked yet, it's the wife's worry. This isn't science. We have to begin with these fundamental things in life. Now, what remains for you is to familiarize yourselves with faith as a principle, so you can understand its manifestation, which reconciles all the contradictions in life. I will show you how contradictions appear. For instance, two youths admire each other. When love manifests as a principle, both of them are ready to run away from home. I say, both of them are heroes. When their first child is born and the mother starts breastfeeding it, she sees that the conditions around her are unfavorable. You notice that the love between them starts to gradually go cold. Why? Because they haven't understood love in all its aspects, in the broader sense, that it has to be maintained with intelligence. When a bird makes her nest on a tree branch, she chooses the branches that are protected from both the slightest breeze as well as the strongest storm. So, she builds it much more intelligently than any engineer. She perceives where there are favorable conditions for building a nest, and that's where she lays her eggs. But modern day people say, we can do without a nest. We can lay our eggs without favorable conditions. And indeed they do lay them, but then they go and hatch them in a foster home. This is the culture of cuckoos. They lay their eggs in someone else's nest. Ask a naturalist, where did the idea arise in the cuckoo to lay her eggs in foreign nests and not to make the nest herself? Someone will say, the Lord ordained it like this. No, the Lord didn't say this. There are many cuckoos, even intelligent ones, who always lay their eggs in foreign nests. Do you know the properties of a cuckoo? She chooses nests that belong to weak birds. So when the cuckoo hatches, being the stronger bird, it throws out the other little birds from the nest. You proceed the same way with your ideas. You say, I will lay eggs in a foreign nest. You lay your idea in a foreign nest. You throw out the other one, but yours is still a cuckoo. Now, figure out what this cuckoo means. If you perceive a divine thought, and if it doesn't teach you how to harmonize yourself with the divine law in nature, if it doesn't impart love for others, then of what use is it to you? Why do you need this thought? One of these thoughts can even bring you doubt. Consequently, one cannot serve love without faith. One cannot please the God of wisdom without faith. When you read the 8th chapter from Proverbs, starting from the 29th verse and going down, you'll see that it speaks of wisdom there. But we're talking about faith here. Number 29. When he gave to the sea its boundary, that the waters should not violate his commandment. The water and the sea are the contemporary world. When he marked out the foundations of the earth. By foundations of the earth, we understand both our own as well as all other organic bodies. Then I was the craftsman by his side. I was a delight day by day, always rejoicing before him, rejoicing in his whole world. My delight was with the sons of men. This doesn't refer to the present sons of men, but regarding the ones from those days who lived with faith, the bearer of love. Now, therefore, my sons, listen to me, for blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise. Don't refuse it. Blessed is the man who hears me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at my doorposts. For whoever finds me finds life, and will obtain favor from Yahweh. Whoever finds me means whoever finds faith. When he'll find life, he won't have any doubts. Every doubt will disappear from him. A new consciousness will come into him. A new kind of intelligence will ignite in such a person, and he'll say, I now understand the meaning of life. But he who sins against me wrongs his own soul. All those who hate me love death. The people of today say, one can do without faith. No, one cannot live with faithlessness. I say, we don't need beliefs, but faith. Faithlessness and faith are two polar opposites, because the faithless person can also become faithful. But the person who has faith can't polarize. Faith is connected to the human mind with the human intellect, and the mind is connected to breathing. And since we are on the verge of a new evolution in the world, we made a 180-degree angle. The path we traversed from the time when we left divine harmony aside is a descending path. Now we're at the bottom and are starting the other half of this circle. We have another 180 degrees to make. This is the law of evolution, in which you'll study things from the bottom and going upwards, whereas until now you studied them from the top down. Only in this way will you have an experience that is much more real than the previous one, which will be more accessible to your minds. This is why all Eastern claims need to be verified from a new perspective. The experiences of Eastern and Western peoples need to be verified. Both the former and the latter are 50% correct. And that's where faith will also enter. Every thought and every science have to be verified by experiment, and nothing should be assumed on the basis of blind trust. Faith implies a live experiment, but the experiment doesn't occur only one way. If you want to check a piece of music, you should find an experienced musician and not some ordinary person, and from him you'll understand whether this music is correct. If you want to find out the properties of matter, you'll find a skilled chemist who doesn't drill holes in pipes and doesn't make explosions. And you'll ask him to give you the first clues regarding the great laws of matter. Matter is one kind of reality. In its current forms, it's transient. Consequently, if we trust these forms, we fool ourselves. The current forms will transform into other ones, which will be real. Our current thoughts are also transient. All our current understandings are merely a preface to that correct understanding which will come. With these words, I'm not trying to say you're ignorant or stupid people, that you don't understand things, but I only state that the reason for your ignorance is due to the fact that you don't have faith, and faith is connected to your mind. Consequently, he who has no faith cannot have a properly developed mind, and from there one also cannot breathe properly, because the mind is connected to breath. Wise people breathe smoothly and harmonically. A thought that affects the breathing is correct. Observe a beautiful woman or man who have a strong will, heart, and mind, and you'll notice the beauty and suppleness in their breathing. Whoever doesn't breathe correctly also doesn't have correct thoughts. A writer might write an article. He starts pondering. He exhales deeply. Then he breathes irregularly. He gets up, gets out his tobacco box. He makes himself a cigarette. He starts pacing the room. He sits again. He writes. And the article is ready. The critics start saying, "Such and such writer wrote an excellent article. What he wrote is smoke." The article itself is as true as the smoke on his cigarette. He wrote an article on how to make society better. Before beginning the article, he says, "Wait, let me cross myself." He crosses himself. No, friend, the cross shows you how to bear your sufferings. When you make a cross and say, "In God's name," ask yourself, does my head know how to think correctly? And his Son, does the love work within my heart? And the Holy Spirit, is God's strength within me? This is what it means to make the cross and to read in God's name. The cross is something internal. Someone says, "Let's cross ourselves." Yes, let's cross ourselves with our heads, with our hearts, and with our strength. When you cross yourselves, tell yourselves, "Is the God of wisdom in my mind? Do I have faith?" How does the person with faith differ from those who have no faith? In this, does he have fear? There is no fear in faith. Someone says, "Let's call a doctor." If you call a doctor out of fear because you're sick, you'll die. If you call him with faith, as one of your brothers, as your friend, you'll get well. When you call the doctor with fear, the doctor will also become frightened. He will also say the condition is dangerous. He decides not to offer treatment. They call a second doctor and he says the same. They call a third one. They gather together to consult with one another. And finally, all three of them say, "He might get better, he might not." And this will resemble the situation of that gypsy who said, "I'm a very learned man. I know where there is water. In that valley down there, there might be water, or there might not be any." Well, everyone is familiar with that kind of science. He might get well, or he might not. She might be good, or she might not be. The elders say, "We know. She might be a very good woman, but she might also not be very good." They don't say what the gypsy says. For instance, "It might be so, it might not be." But they say, "It could be so, it could also not be so." Someone is asking, "What do you think of my thought?" Hey, it might be good, it might be correct. No, you don't say, "It might be so," but you say, "It must be so." And then we say, I don't know who will be saved. No, I do know who will be saved. I know who will enter the kingdom of God. I know whom the Lord has chosen. And all those people who have faith also know this. There is nothing hidden for the one who has faith. There are some hidden things, but when? Only when it's a matter of transgression. These are the only things that are hidden. And good deeds need to remain a secret. Both the good and bad people need to hide in this world. Why? Only evil is hidden. The evil person hides so they don't catch him and throw him in prison. The good person, the rich person, hides so they don't subject him to Article 4 of the law and tell him, you are an enemy of the state, now into the dungeon you go. This is why rich people now deny that they are rich. But there was a time when people boasted of their wealth, that they had money. Today, all the rich people want to pass off as being poor. Why? Because of Article 4. This is incorrect thinking. This is no philosophy in life. The ox that plows the field and splits the furrows says, I'm the one who plows. Yes, because there's a goad. Yet it's the plower who bears the law. And I think we already passed through this teaching regarding the goad. Now we have the teaching of faith. According to the new teaching, each person must experience his thought on his own to see whether it's correct or not. I will present my thought to my brother, and I'll let him perceive it. He won't ask me whether my thought is correct. Why? Because I already tried my thought 99 times. Not only I, but from 8,000 years onwards, the people have been trying this great law. You too can try it. Today I speak to you about faith. Say, we will live with faith. Impart faith within yourselves and start working with it. Do not think about how people look upon you, whether you're intelligent or not. All right, if you're intelligent, I'll give you a problem to solve. AI is to A equals EI is to E equals CI is to C. What do you understand when you see this formula? It's a formula that determines the relations of the invisible world to the visible one. When a certain phenomenon occurs in the physical world, a corresponding phenomenon occurs in the invisible world as well. This is the law. When a person is born on earth, at the same time, someone else is born in heaven. When someone else dies on earth, someone also dies in heaven. When a person dies on earth, he is born in heaven. That is, in order for a person to go from earth to heaven, someone else must come to earth. They replace each other. There is a certain ratio between the variables. Someone asks, why should I die? No, you won't die. But I say, it has been decided for you to be born in the other world, and for someone else to be born on earth. You will say, this is as far as we are willing to listen to you, but from now on, we won't listen to you. I don't insist that you accept this as a positive truth, but as a symbol. But you will check it, and you'll understand that there is a certain correlation between the spiritual and physical world. And so, you will examine what your faith is like in the subconscious, in the conscious, in the self-conscious, and in the superconscious. When every doubt, hatred, and lie disappear from your soul and they rise to the surface, tell yourselves, no, I can no longer work with this variable. If you say this to yourselves, This shows that faith has put down her first root in your heart. Faith is linked to rhythmic breathing. This is why the Hindus strive to breathe rhythmically, as they sometimes want to regulate their thought from top to bottom. But Western people still don't know this. They strive to go from the bottom up. It has been observed that people with tuberculosis breathe fast. The rhythm of their breathing is short. Consequently, the change in energies is irregular in them, which means there is a struggle between their faith and thought. How does tuberculosis arise? Either from fear or hatred. Every young woman can get infected with tuberculosis. Take away her lover. Deprive her of the hope that there will be another one, and a tightness will appear in her, hatred, and she'll become infected with tuberculosis. She says, "I can't live without this young man." Therein lies the delusion. No, your young man is your mind. He's the object of your love. If the young woman meets a young man in the physical world who corresponds to her real lover, she should take him in. But if she doesn't meet such a man, it's better if she lives alone. The mind's first lover is the heart. If the two come to love each other, this is the proper marriage. But the young woman says, "This inner lover won't be able to feed me. However, the one from the outside will. The one from the outside is the one." No. The one from the outside will betray you. You, men and women, who have tried this law, who have had the experience of marrying, are you happy? Have you solved this issue correctly? No. You resemble the famous English reformer, John Wesley, who married his beloved, and after 3 days he said, "There's no use in getting married, it's not worth it." And these words were uttered by a great man, a reformer. The mind is the first beloved. He will bring you light. This beloved will find external forms in order to express himself. Then the heart of the young man will find his beloved somewhere outside, and a correct crossover will occur. When the mind of a young man crisscrosses into the heart of a young woman, a truly good marriage occurs in the physical world. Yet nowadays, every young man seeks a young woman, and vice versa. He finds a young woman and starts telling her what he wrote. She admires him. He says, "Hey, I'm a genius." When the young woman relates what she yearns and longs for, he says to her, "You're so naive." If he says this to her, she needs to stay away from him. He's not for her. His breathing is not rhythmic. You will say, "You're going to expose all our dirty shirts." Yes, the water that is now coming into the world will expose all your dirty shirts. Well, when you dip the dirty shirts in hot water and boil them, doesn't the grime boil and float to the top? Consequently, when you plant the correct thought in your minds, it will bring out all your shortcomings. Do not think that my lecture aims to uncover your particular errors. It doesn't relate to you individually at all. But I tell you, if you want your life to be harmonious in the future, impart faith within, change your thinking, and start straightening out your past. All your thoughts and desires, which have piled on in layers within you from countless previous existences, can only be straightened out via the law of love in the human spirit, and through the law of the human mind. When love penetrates from the bottom up, from the heart and into the soul, from the soul into the mind, and from there into the human spirit, there will be harmony and movement in two directions, two opposing currents. When two people shake hands, they hold out their hands from two places, don't they? This is a kind of movement in which there are two opposing currents at the same time. If the thought and breath are correct in the young man, the proper currents flow in him, and if you happen to be a clairvoyant, you will notice a light emanating from his hand, which is directed by his mind. If the feelings in the young woman are correct, you will see a soft white light emanating from her, surrounded by a very thin pink color. These two lights, coming from the young man and woman, when they meet and unite, will form a divine wave. What do these two youths feel? They say, "We are both ready to struggle in the world and to sacrifice ourselves." Then, in that case, even old grannies would have to resurrect, because there are no old people. Old people are those who have lost that original law of faith, and they die from hunger. Herbert Spencer said, "When the exchange of energies in the organism occurs incorrectly, man ages quickly, and he can even die soon. But when it occurs correctly, that is, however much he expends, that's how much he gains, he can live 100, 200, or more years." I don't uphold such a view, because the meaning of life doesn't consist in its duration, but in its intelligent application. Christ says, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." When we know how to combine the powers of our heart, soul, mind, and spirit, we can do this both for ourselves as well as our friends. Regarding this, Christ says, "If two people are gathered together in my name, they must have a common goal." These are the people who need to have love. God is love, and all the people move towards love. But at the same time, they want to be rich and happy, and that depends on certain laws. And so, the breathing has to occur rhythmically. However, if you permit hatred or deceit within yourself, your breathing will change. It's enough for a person to permit 100 such thoughts and desires within himself, which will cause him to suffer an apoplectic stroke. The accumulation of these thoughts will affect the breathing. The breathing will affect the heart, and life will immediately cease. Why? Because this person didn't think and breathe correctly. They will send a committee from the invisible world that will say, "This person didn't think correctly," and they'll take him. We can't please God without faith. We can't serve mankind without faith. We can't serve our neighbor without faith. We can't even be of service to ourselves without faith. The day a person loses his faith, he also loses himself. You need positive faith. You need faith in your thoughts and feelings, and you shouldn't obtain it from foreign sources. I'm not talking about the cuckoo's eggs. What are your thoughts? That which is born from God is ours. It belongs to everyone. But that which is born from outside is the cuckoo's egg. Someone wants to make a big house to spread a large feast. But woe to the chickens who will participate, who will suffer for this feast. This happens everywhere in the world. One nation will become rich, but at its expense another one will become poor. This is incorrect. It's not culture. Consequently, when the law of faith gets distorted, the nations degenerate. Entire nations, entire tribes, matriarchs, and races disappear. If the people continue thinking like this for another 100 years, even the current race, along with all the European nations, will become stupid. They'll degenerate. When they degenerate, a new race will come, which will put things in order in a new way. Hence, the first thing we have to do is straighten out our thought. We have to impart faith in ourselves. For now, we'll leave aside the nations. We'll leave aside the law of evolution so it can keep going along its path. But I don't want any fear at all to remain in your souls. Leave the fear outside. You should feel fear only when you sin. But when you do good, you shouldn't have fear. We modern-day people only think about what's going to happen to us. Nothing bad will happen. He who sent us to earth, the love that gave birth to us, which is the first thing in the world, will make us immortal. Our clothes might change, but this isn't death. These are variations. This is singing, a divine harmony of things. The first and most useful thing to us is faith, in order to change all our thoughts. Try to bring harmony into yourselves at the very first lesson. You have a certain ailing condition. Say to yourselves, in order to correct this condition of mine, it requires faith. Hence, I will change my beliefs into faith, and I will put harmony into my thoughts. Unite with all the people and say, all the people on earth are good. All the laws are right. There are no exceptions. Death is something transient in the world. If you apply this law in your mind, not even 1, 2, or 3 hours will pass, or according to the severity of the disease, even several days, and your disease will disappear. Similarly, you can check to see whether your thought is correct. Try this law, and when you have rheumatism in your foot, don't rush to call a doctor, but check to see whether you can transfer the illness to your hand with your thought, and from there you can throw it out. If you act through your faith, you'll move the currents of your electricity and magnetism from one place to another in your organism, and your rheumatism will pass. Rheumatism is an accumulation of thoughts, and obesity is also the same. A person who thinks too much will also start experiencing too many feelings. This shows that the heart works a lot in such a person. If someone eats a lot and doesn't work, he will grow very fat. And soon enough, they'll call a doctor for him. Obesity is a sign that the thoughts and feelings aren't correct. The same law applies to skinny people. Skinny people are very active. No, everything needs to be in moderation. If a thought comes to you, don't stop it, but express it. If a certain feeling comes, express it. Work. Don't stop working. This is how you'll come in contact with the great divine law. If you meet an old man who has fallen on the road, but you're a student or a teacher, you're in a hurry to get to work and don't stop. No, stop. Help him with whatever you can. Or you see 2 children fighting and crying. Stop. Reconcile them. Don't beat them, but give them 1 lev or 1 grosh. Or if you have apples, give them an apple. Advise them not to fight, and turn their attention to the fact that they are brothers, that both of them are right. When they're reconciled like this, these children will always listen to you. You'll do a good deed. But if you reconcile them and explain that they're not doing the right thing, they won't understand you. They're both right. Among you, religious people, there's a lot to cry about. About what? About their sins. Worldly people, however, cry because one of their own died. Students cry because they failed the test. Professors cry because they lose their chairs. Everyone cries because they don't think correctly. Strive to make your breathing more rhythmic and even. When a single correct thought comes to you, immediately check to see whether your breathing is correct. Every thought that gives an impulse to your life is correct. You breathe intermittently, but this is an irregularity you have to get rid of. If you breathe like this, some misfortune will befall you. Notice that when you breathe incorrectly, your heart twitches. It flutters from time to time. Such fluttering also occurs amongst the sheep of a shepherd when some misfortune is about to happen to them. If the sheep rush and stop suddenly, the shepherd knows that hardly several hours will go by and the misfortune will take place. If your thoughts and feelings run from one place to another, you have to be on guard. You have to know that the thief is close to you. And so, faith is a living principle of the mind. Only through faith will we be able to discover all the secrets hidden in nature. If we know these secrets, we will also be able to rejuvenate our lives. This won't happen in 1, 2, or 10 years, but will happen within 100 years. And so, these two principles, love and faith, we have to unite. We have to combine the power of the spirit, of the mind, of the soul, of the heart, as an aspiration of the heart in the subconscious, as a feeling of the soul in the conscious, as strength of the mind in the self-conscious, and as a principle of the spirit in the superconscious. And in this combination will come the new thought that can rejuvenate us. And then you'll notice that when two people meet who know how to rejuvenate themselves like this, they can tolerate each other. If such rejuvenation is not present, they can't tolerate each other. And this is very natural because both of them are negative either in their hearts or in their souls or in their minds or in their spirits. There must always be harmony and people must complement each other. That is, when the mind works in the young man, the heart needs to work in the young woman. When the spirit works in the young man, the soul must be working in the young woman. Only in this way will there be complete harmony, total compatibility. Wherever these people are, there will always be harmony between them. Should one and the same thought enter into both of them, there will be disharmony, disunity. Every thought has a movement from north to south and from east to west. This is what man is. Otherwise, there will always be crisscrossing. These are forces of the heart, forces of the soul, forces of the mind, and forces of the spirit. The forces of the mind descend toward the heart. That is, from the central nervous system, they descend toward the sympathetic nervous system, and from there they rise to the head. Where this interweaving takes place, a new current forms. Consequently, if you meet a person, a man or woman, with whom your thoughts interweave correctly, you'll sense a certain harmony, and either new thoughts or new feelings will arise in you. If you don't have this harmony between you, you'll return to your homes feeling burdened. You'll get a headache. This doesn't mean these people are bad, but you should have proceeded differently. Would you dress in white, thin clothes in wintertime? Would you dress in thick clothes in summertime? When you go to a person who lives in the winter of his life, you'll put on your thick clothes. When you go to a person who lives in his summer, you'll dress in bright, thin clothes. You'll be considerate enough to know where and at what time you go, and don't think that people are bad. In a positive sense, there are no bad people on earth. In my view, bad people are those who have a lot of fertilizer on them and who steal something that is ready-made. What do they steal? The good things that belong to other people. Good people are those who give, whereas bad people are those who take. The robber stands in the forest and waits for someone to pass by. A person passes by who worked for 3 or 4 whole years just so he could earn something and feed his children. The thief takes his money, he robs him. And so, in the world, there are 2 methods for robbing, a slow method and a fast one. For instance, you want to take someone's money. You start convincing him. You go to him the first day. You talk to him. He doesn't agree. You go the second day. You try to convince him again. He doesn't agree. Finally, you manage to take his money. He says, "This person deceived me." The fast method belongs to the robber. When you go to someone with a revolver in your hand, he himself says, take it, the sooner the better." In this way, no time is wasted. The fast method is detrimental. All the present people proceed according to this method. They carry their revolvers and say, "Give us your money, you'll work while I rest." But according to God's law, it is written, we will all work and equally divide the goods. Everyone will work as much as he can, and no one should ever use anyone. This is the law of faith. When I speak to you about faith, I say that other beings live on earth too, very intelligent ones, whom you don't see. Now, I'll proceed to another subject where x is to y equals xi is to yi. The latter ratio, xi is to yi, represents the abstract world. These beings are wiser. They're more intelligent than you. They mastered the laws that guide our lives, and they work among us. Whatever you think, whatever you project, they are among us. You are under their influence. You ponder how to solve an issue. They struggle and they solve it. Do not think these people are shadows. They are real people. They are materialized. They are clothed with bodies. And there is a way for you to talk with them. They're not shadows. In order to understand me better, I will give you a comparison. Imagine that I find myself before an anthill. The ants have a certain order of things. They carry this and that into the anthill. I put my cane into their anthill. A huge uproar rises among the ants. Someone is disturbing their anthill. They say, some disturbances occur in nature. Natural forces have an influence on us. But those forces are my cane. Then I put my finger between some of them and some ant bites me. Imagine that some ant gets the idea that there's an intelligent being here who is disturbing them. Is she far from the truth? Consequently, regarding these giant people whom I'm referring to, we are like the ants. I can prove to you that they exist when I put their cane among you and stir you up. You can try an experiment so you can see their cane. One day I stand before an anthill and use a magnifying glass to focus the light directly in front of their path. They go toward the light, but when it burns them, they jump. They say to themselves, "What is this phenomenon? It's something very bright, yet it burns." The ants go around me. They ponder as they go around. It's a whole concert. They wonder about this phenomenon. I tell them, "It's me. Do you recognize me?" Oftentimes, these big people, whom I refer to as the wise ones, focus on the people, just as we do with the little ants. They have decided to fix the world. They've been given power from above. A plan has also been given to them. And now they're going to start plowing. This is what I call a new order and organization in the world, which is what these beings are going to bring. When you listen to me now, you say to yourselves, if this is true, it's a great lie. Bushi isa çok yalandır, as the Turkish proverb says. If you have faith, you'll make an attempt, and you'll become convinced. But if you only have beliefs, you'll say, according to the Turkish proverb, if this is true, it's a great lie. No, this is not a lie. So, let's return to our thought. The primordial intelligence that must come into the world flows from God. A new wave is coming from this primary source, which the people must accept. They say, God breathed a soul in man. Now God is breathing new breaths. In the span of thousands of years, God breathes only once. You will understand the two principles, that God is an all-embracing love that envelops all beings, and that God is an all-embracing intelligence. This intelligence will manifest according to the nature of each being. There should be diversity among the beings, but there should also be this divine harmony in all of us. Put the teaching to the test. Make your breathing rhythmic. Impart in your hearts, in your souls, in your minds, and in your spirits, just as you would also in the subconscious, in the conscious, in the self-conscious, and in the superconscious, the thought of seeing these beings, and you will see them. When you see these beings, you will find your teachers, your brothers and sisters. They are noble beings, and they are so exalted in their deeds, and thus they fulfill the teaching of Christ. You don't even have an idea of it all. When you go to their homes as a guest, they will receive you as their smaller brothers. They will give you the best welcome, and they will send you into this world so you can bring the new teaching. In your current condition, with these minds, hearts, and souls that you have, you cannot see them. Your sky is cloudy. The doubt you have, whether this exists or not, shows that you cannot serve faith. You cannot serve this God who is within you. I mean, your souls. And so one cannot please God. One cannot please love without faith. You are still not inside your bodies, but you're outside. To one's soul, the body of man is still only like the chair of the professor. He gets up on it. He delivers his lesson. The whole thing takes 2 to 3 hours, and he gets back down. Man lives only temporarily in his body, where he also has a chair. The spirit descends into the body only at certain times, for certain hours and minutes, until it delivers its lessons. But the soul is something great. Some people ask me, if it's such a great big thing, how can so many people gather together in the world? The great soul is one in which there is an intense, broad-reaching love and correct thought. A soul in which there is no love, which lacks correct thought, is small. It's not about the external form. It's not about the big bottle. The saint can live in a hut, and the criminal in a palace. But it's not the palace that creates the genius, nor is it the hut that creates ignorance. Consequently, you have to change your thought in order to change the world. All of us created our thought collectively. We created our bodies by distorting them. We'll continue working collectively in order to return to the primordial consciousness as we unite with this great law. Today, the weather is clear, a witness to the fact that if we accept the new teaching, we will have this light. It bears witness for me, but I am already so happy and rich. Yet it's you who have to acquire this for yourselves, and you'll pass it on to your children, to your generation. Now your blackened faces and white hairs say something else. I would like it if your hairs turn white, but not out of fear, but love. When the hair changes out of love, it acquires various colors. When iron gets heated, it turns bright, but when it cools down, it turns black. All those whose hair is black must turn white. You ask why you age. Well, don't the burned coals have to heat up the iron? So the energy of the coals goes into the iron. This is why we have to bring some coals. Do not think that it's bad to have black hair. Black hair and black eyes mean these people are still in the shadow. The light has not yet penetrated within them. These people aren't sinners, but they have stored up energy within, which will manifest in the future. They are waiting to blossom and ripen in the future. But people with white hair show that they blossomed and are ripe, being young or old, along with death and being born multiple times. Then this, to put it another way, means to love and to think. Love is the beginning of life. Thinking, this is the person as an adult who has understood the meaning of life, and that's why his head started turning white. Without faith, without this mind, you cannot serve God. I challenge the view in which others say we don't need the mind too much, and that we don't need knowledge. No. What we need is a divine mind, divine understandings, so we can understand the higher mathematics, biology, astronomy, the natural sciences, and to add to that, in all their relations, so we can understand how the animals and plants are interrelated. Nothing in the world is meaningless. Hence, we must come to love every tree and plant, every animal, and when we appear before each one of them, we should give them good thoughts. Do not think that things in the world are bad. In order to become bad, we are the cause of this. This is why we must set about repairing this world from the outside in. And so, start correcting your thought and your passions. There are passions that burn. I have often heard a young woman say, "He burned me." Yes, this electricity the young man sends to the woman can be so powerful that it can instantly kill her. The feelings of a mother can be so powerful that they can burn the child. We have to know how to feel, how to think. Sometimes the thought and feeling are so powerful that they can resurrect someone. The feelings can kill and resurrect. Both one and the other are true. And now, the forces of nature are subject to the human mind. If you want to make use of this law, you have to have faith and love. And God will give you a new way to check things. Then you'll say, "My thought is correct." But now you say, "There might be water, there might not be any." This is the faith of the gypsy. Apply love and faith. Make one attempt, and then you'll understand the issue in greater detail. I would start explaining all this to you mathematically, with the modern-day algebra and geometry, but how many of you would understand me? Which professor in mathematics has ever succeeded in convincing his students of the validity of his theories? They study theories, lots of rules, but when the time comes to apply them in life, they don't know how. I say, the new teaching, and we know how to apply one kind of energy to organic life. When I say we, I mean the white brothers who live among us. I hear them now when they say, some of these disciples can become good, but others might not. Some of them will be disciples, while others will be proselytes. If you accept them, they will help you, and you will become the bearers of the new culture, the new heaven and the new earth, which are being created now. This new thought is saying to the world, there must be absolutely no lying in your minds. If you accept some hypotheses, keep them as such, but in your mind you must hold these truths which are absolutely proven. This task is achieved with faith. And you should know one thing: where you came from and where you are going. Where did you come from? You say, they gave birth to me. Do you remember the day and time of your birth? No, my mother and grandmother tell me. I know that I'm going to die. How do you know? I believe it. No, these are beliefs, not faith. When we direct our thought, we will know when we were born. We will know when we will leave this world. We will know where the physical world begins and how far it extends. We will know where the spiritual world begins and how far it extends. That is why you need an excellent mind like Christ's. In order to be pure, intelligent, exalted people, heroes in the world, you need faith, through which everything is obtained. It is one of the qualities of angels. People must also acquire this quality. The new culture begins with faith. Now apply faith and love. It begins with time. And time is the tempo of divine harmony. And harmony is the inner meaning of life. This is the doctrine of faith that Christ preached to the world. If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will be able to move a mountain. Believe and you will be saved, both you and your family. And so, believe in your mind, which will have an influence on your breathing, which will be rhythmic and not filled with grunting. Apply your will through your thought in order to make your lives happy. I will now tell you a story from Tolstoy. They brought a grain of wheat to a king, which was as big as a chicken egg. The king ordered the oldest man in the city to be summoned, to ask him if he remembered such a large grain of wheat from his time. They barely brought this old man in, for he was supported by 2 crutches. The king asked him about the wheat, but the man replied, "The wheat didn't grow like this in my time. Ask my father." His father comes, supported by 1 crutch. He sees the grain of wheat and says, "This kind of wheat didn't grow in my time. Ask my father." The father comes in, looking like a nice and slender old man without any crutches. He looks at the wheat and says, "Yes, such a wheat grew in our time. We fed ourselves with it." The king asks this old man, "Why is it that you, who are the oldest in years than everyone, walk so upright and without any crutches, whereas your son has 1 crutch, while your grandson has 2? The old man replied, "This is so because this grain of wheat no longer grows in them." And so, when this correct thought grew within people, they walked without a crutch. When it became perverted, they started walking with 1 crutch. And when no memory was left of it, they started walking with 2 crutches. The king asked the old man, "Well, did you buy it with money?" "In our time there was no money," the old man replied. "And so I give you this chicken egg, this grain of wheat, faith, with which the people once fed themselves. Accept it, plant it, and live with it, and you too will have the best thoughts in your mind. You'll be healthy, and the nervousness, the thoughtlessness in life, the sufferings, everything will disappear, and you'll say, 'Now it makes sense to live. This is good for us and for all of mankind.' The life of the Bulgarian peoples, of the teachers and priests, will only make sense when people's faith descends into its primordial essence, without arising any doubt. Then you'll understand those problems from higher mathematics and geometry, which are currently unknown to people." Lecture held in Sofia on the 6th of March, 1921.